and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired, and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Thanks for joining me on the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast, the podcast where we share insights, practical tips, and strategic actions for Christian professional spouses whose marriage is struggling or could use a spark and is looking to strengthen their intimacy and deepen their connection and with their partner, and ultimately have a God-honoring and happier marriage. Now, if this is you, this episode is for you. This is episode number 49, one episode away from episode 50, which is going to be a celebration. And I hope you're here to celebrate that with me when we hit the 50th episode. That's the next one that's coming up. But today I have another powerful episode for you as we discuss why timing is everything for resolving conflicts in marriage. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about the importance of timing in resolving conflicts. Now, whether you're dealing with a minor disagreement or a major issue, choosing the right moment, and you could possibly agree or disagree with this, but I think you would agree, but choosing the right moment to have a conversation, right? Especially on topics that are challenging or, are heavy, right? Choosing the right moment to have a conversation that could be conflictual or lead to some kind of experience that you don't want to get into, can make a big difference in the outcome of the conversation, the discussion. Timing. And you may have heard this phrase many times or heard this phrase before, that timing is what? Everything. And we're going to find out if that's true in this episode. So if you want to improve your communication and deepen your connection with your partner, then this episode is for you. So let me begin today's episode with the following 3 questions. And I want you to, as I read these questions, as I go over them with you, I want you to hold them close and ponder them as we go through this episode. Question number 1. As it pertains to you, have you ever struggled with finding the right words to express how you feel to your partner? Question number 2, do you avoid difficult conversations because you're worried about starting an argument? And question number 3, can you think of a time when speaking up and it wasn't the right time made your relationship better? That's a question that we want to wrestle with, or these questions we want to wrestle through as we cover this episode. Now, we all know how conflicts can sneak up on us and cause havoc, right? It causes havoc and disruptions and challenges in our relationship. But I want you to don't be basically thinking that there's not a way to do this right. So fear not. We're going to discuss and unpack that in this episode. And I'm here to equip you with the practical tips and insights, as I mentioned earlier, on how to navigate what I call these tricky moments. And in doing so, create a happier, God-honoring marriage. Now, but the good news is that with a little practice, you can learn. And, I can just put this out there by saying this. I've been married for almost 4 decades. And you know what? I'm still learning. I'm still fine-tuning how to make things better, because every stage of life that we go through, it brings its own challenges. It's different things that you did not even anticipate, you didn't factor in, you didn't count on. Those things come up, and you've got to find a way to navigate that. So I'm still learning, and I know that I'll still learn throughout my lifetime. And I hope you're open to learning as well. because you're going to learn in this episode how to find the right timing to address issues without creating more conflicts in your marriage. So if you're looking to learn that, how to be better at timing and how to create a safe space to discuss important and sometimes difficult issues, should I say it again? This is the episode for you. Now, some people, and I hope you're not one of those, some people may disagree with me and argue that even with timing, you cannot avoid conflicts. And, well, I could answer that right now, but I'm going to hold that. I'm going to hold that thought. I just want you to hear some objections or why some people may disagree with me, right? For example, a spouse may say, I don't have time to wait for the right moment. We need to address our conflicts now. Is that you? Is that how you have dealt with it? Right? Would you object to what I'm saying about timing because you feel as if you can't wait for the right moment? The urgency of this must be done now or else. So my question is, or else what? Well, I don't want to get off into that tangent because we're going to cover some of those things in this episode. Here's another objection that I have seen or heard come across, and that is, what if my spouse, my partner, isn't ready to talk when I am? What happens then? So, should I wait until he or she is ready? Good question. We'll try to address that in this episode. And the third objection that I've seen and heard is that we've tried talking about our problems before and it never goes well. How is timing going to change anything? And that's a valid question, especially if you are the one that have been trying to, but it seems like no matter what you've done, what time of day, morning, noon, or night, it still didn't go well. So your question might be, how is timing going to change anything? Now, even though you may have one or more of these objections, right? If you want to build a stronger, healthier marriage, I want to say it again, I want to share with you in a few moments 3 ways how to be better at timing, in sharing topics that could lead to conflict if you didn't practice good timing. Now, we'll also hear the story of Sarah and John. As you've been tracking with me and listening to the last 3 or so episodes, I've introduced to you Sarah and John as, fictitious character or couple that we've been following and sharing aspects of their lives as it relates to our topic of discussion on this episode. And in their story, we are hoping that you'll be able to relate to the issues they are facing and how they navigated through them, or how they could have navigated through them. And mostly the latter, because we're going to find that their story tend to be, they hit a wall, they hit a crossroad, and they don't know what to do. And you're going to hear that in the story when I share with you in a few minutes. So let's see why timing is everything for resolving conflicts in marriage, while at the same time, we're going to explore some of the objections that we mentioned just a few moments ago. Now, here's some benefits of why it's everything. I think it's important to understand that there's something in it for you. There's a reason why timing is not just because it's a cliche or something that people say that timing is everything. No, there are some things that you can benefit, and here what that may look like. So, for example, to deepen your understanding and having more empathy for your partner, timing is important. The right timing, it allows you and your partner to be in the right emotional space. I call it a safe space, so you can have open and honest conversation. And when you're able to do that and connecting at that level, then it's inevitable that you're going to have a deeper understanding of each other's perspective because you're respecting what they're sharing and you're more present with that. So it's going to deepen your understanding of your partner, and you're going to see more empathy comes as a result of that. So the first thing, one of the first benefits that I want to share. Second benefit is that you're going to reduce tension in your relationship and increase chances of finding resolutions. But timing is going to allow you to reduce tensions in your relationship and to increase your chance of coming to some kind of resolution in the conflict. So when you choose the right moment, right, what it does, it allows you to minimize the behaviors that would come when you don't practice good timing or the right timing, because people become defensive. You create an environment where conflicts can be resolved with greater ease when you have the right timing. And when you're able to do that, it leads to a more satisfying outcome or relationship. And the third benefit is it strengthens your emotional bond. When you're mastering or practicing timing when it comes to conflict, what's going to happen is that it's going to create a sense of trust and connection and intimacy, and ultimately a foundation for a happier and more God-honoring marriage. So I think those three benefits are just what I share. Is really, if there's any reason why you want to practice timing in your marriage when you have conflict, these three benefits should be enough to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we're missing out on these things. Maybe we're missing out on strengthening our emotional bond. Maybe we're missing out on reducing our tension and increasing our chance of resolution in our conflict. Maybe we are missing out on deepening our understanding and having empathy for each other. Because why? We're not practicing timing. So now these benefits are something that I believe that many couples, including you as a spouse, could avail yourself to. If you only understood how timing works and how important that is. And that's what I'm going to share with you in this episode, how it works, but also how important. Well, now I've already shared with you how important it is because you've heard the benefits. And I believe those things are important enough, right? So let's get and share with you Sarah and John's story. And here is what Sarah and John is going through. Now, as you know, they've been married for 7 years and they have 2 children. Now, they have faced occasional conflicts that have tested their patience and commitment in their relationship. So what happened is that they had a heated argument that escalated, and see if you resonate with this. It escalated from a small issue that led to hurtful words and eventually spiraled out of control. Sounds familiar? Have you ever been there? If you have, stay with me. Now, here's what happened. When that happened, John wants to apologize and make things right. But guess what? Sarah, she is too upset to discuss it, which only worsened the situation. You're following so far? You see how things are kind of spiraling? You see how things are getting, what small things is leading to a bigger thing? So what happened? Tension in their relationship grew over time. And as the days went on and weeks went on, what they began to do is feel distant, and they began to feel unhappy in their relationship. And now what they enjoyed before their once beautiful marriage, it feels like it's hanging on the thread. And they're uncertain now at this point about their relationship. And they also are unsure of how to repair the damage. Now, what happened is that they began to avoid the issues because of where they were in their relationship, that stalemate, which only bred more resentment, causing more resentment, and it pushes them even farther apart. Now, here's what happened. John and Sarah, they do recognize that they need to do something, but here is a problem, and this may be where you are. They're uncertain about where to begin or how to restore their love and happiness because, again, they didn't know, it seemed like there's never a right time to bring up a topic or revisit an issue. That's Sarah and John's story. Now, we're going to get back to their story in a few moments after we discuss the 3 most important reasons, what I believe, why timing is everything to resolve conflict in your marriage. But now, before I share that with you, I'm asking you to do what I call a spousal honor. You may have heard this before if you've listened to my past episodes. And what that means is simply saying you're going to show your appreciation for getting, I believe, such incredible value from every episode on this podcast, all for free. And I'm simply saying, as you may have heard the phrase gentleman's honor. Just that as spousal honor is simply saying, I'm going to take a few minutes or ask you to take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on the platform on which you listen to this podcast. Now, that's the least I believe you can do in return, and I hope you'll agree with that. Now, I'll give you a quick overview towards the end of this episode of how to do that on your phone and how you can actually do it in basically a very, very quick time, maybe less than 90 seconds or so, about 90 seconds. It can take really less than that if you want, depends on how much you want to write, but I'll tell you how to do that at the end of this episode. So hang in there, because I also have an announcement I'll make there through the announcer at the end of this episode. Now, to ensure that you don't miss on any episodes, I want you to subscribe to the show today. So you can go ahead and click subscribe on the episode, on the podcast. And if you've missed any of the past episodes, I want to strongly encourage you to bookmark this podcast so you can quickly access, the show. But also you can go to happiermarriagesecrets.com, happiermarriagesecrets.com, and you'll have access to all the past episodes, all 48 episodes you have access to. You can go back and listen to those episodes. Now, if this is the first time you're listening to me, I want to say thank you for being here. And you may not agree with everything I say. And quite frankly, I don't expect you to. Why? Because you're smart. You are a smart person. Smart people who are the ones listening to this podcast. And I know that you are able to navigate some of these things yourself. But I believe that I'm bringing to you a different angle that really challenges some of your thought process or even the status quo, because I can be a contrarian. So if you're triggered by anything you hear on this show, I want you to hold fort, don't run off, because one of those things that I do here is stir things up, but I guarantee you I'll take you in for a safe landing. So you can count on that. Now, this show is brought to you by KingsleyGrant.com. KingsleyGrant.com is a website that truly covers a lot more that I do: speaking, consulting, coaching, but also there are resources that are available on KingsleyGrant.com. And I hope to your heart's content is go there, see what's available, see what intrigues you, and have access to those things. Some of those resources are paid and some are also free. So our hope is that you'll be challenged, inspired, and encouraged in this episode as in every other episode. So stay tuned.
So, the big question is this: how is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
Hey, what's up again, ladies and gentlemen of the Happier Marriage world? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage podcast. Today, we are discussing why timing is everything for resolving conflicts in marriage. Now, just to remind you that you can also watch video episodes of topics like this one on my YouTube channel. Yes, you heard that right. You can watch that on YouTube at KingsleyGrant.com/YouTube. Very simple. KingsleyGrant.com/YouTube. You can watch your heart's content. And you can also watch very short versions of my shorts, YouTube shorts there, that just give you a short, brief 90-second or less capsule of the topic that I'm discussing. And make sure that when you go to my YouTube channel, promise me this, right? Promise me this. So when you go there, you'll do 3 quick things. Here, the first thing: hit that subscribe button. Yes, you heard me. Hit that button. And then you also can click on the notification bell to be notified. And if you like what you hear, click the like button. And I really, truly appreciate that. And you can make sure you go over there once you finish this episode, or once you get off the road or get off jogging, however you're consuming this podcast. When you have a chance, make sure you just go to the YouTube channel, subscribe there so you can have it marked and you know how to find it really quickly. Right? Okay. Again, let me simply say thanks for joining me on this episode. As you've already heard, we're talking about why timing is everything for resolving conflicts in marriage. Now, I want to share with you 3 ways to implement these ideas that could help you choose better timing and what to do when you are wanting to talk to your partner about things that may be heavy, things that could be conflictual, things that you may be afraid to bring up because you're not sure whether or not he or she is ready to hear what you have to say. So the first thing I want to mention is this. I want you to recognize emotional cues. Recognize emotional cues. Now, this is where some people get it wrong. And I find a lot of couples, and maybe you as a spouse, may find yourself getting it wrong. Because what happened is that when you are emotionally charged, when you are going through something that is important to you and has stirred you up, rubbed you the wrong way, your emotion is triggered. And what happened is when you're unable to see things clearly, hear things clearly, you're unable to be rational as you would normally be, right? You tend to be more irrational and less using your cognitive brain and thinking cognitively, shall I say, not a cognitive brain, but thinking cognitively, meaning thinking through processing. So you tend to be more irrational, right? More emotional than anything, more illogical when your emotions are stirred up. Am I right? Yeah, I'm right. I'm right because it happens to me. It happens to the best of us. Our emotions is not a good way to use our emotions to guide us in when we're in a situation that is probably conflictual. We got to be able to manage that. One of the things you've heard me say many times, if you've been with me for some time, is I talk a lot about emotional intelligence, which is the ability to manage your emotions and the emotions of others in a relationship context. And so the more emotionally intelligent you become, I think the better it is. So if you're able to recognize emotional cues, you can be able to remain relatively calm and be more able to engage with your partner without creating a more conflictual situation. It would be a better chance to resolve conflicts when you're able to manage your emotions, turn the temperature down, dial down what's happening, and also have a chance to listen to the God Spirit who might be prompting you to calm you down, right? And sometimes we overlook that very thing. We overlook what we're hearing deep in our hearts. Maybe God is speaking to our hearts to say, hey, bring that temperature down, right? Or reminding you what the Bible says, that, be angry, but don't sin. So we need to kind of throttle down our emotions so we don't find ourselves crossing the line. So you need to recognize emotional cues, your emotional cue, but also your partner's emotional cue, because you can tell what's going on. You can tell when he or she is more in the mood for something or they're not. Now, here's where I find sometimes people may say, well, Kingsley, if I recognize their cues and it's always that way, there's never a time I see where their facial expression is warm enough. It seems to be they're always angry. Well, I don't know if always is accurate, is totally accurate. But you've got to be able to manage yours and then look at what's happening. Because again, even if they don't look receptive and they're seeming to be angry, you can find a way, because the Bible says a soft answer turns away wrath. You can find a way to have a soft approach, because maybe your approach is too hard and maybe your approach is based upon what you're seeing. And in doing that, then you're going to behave accordingly because you're thinking like, okay, if he wants to be that way, I can be that way too. Now, my friend, you know this, that when you approach it that way, you're not going to get anywhere with that person. So recognize emotional cues. Secondly, find the right setting. Find the right setting. Now, so Kingsley, what's the right setting? Well, let's start this way. You know what the wrong setting is, right? Because if you're in a situation with your spouse and you have distractions and you're on the phone and the TV is blaring, or, you're doing something that distracts you, that's not the right setting, right? So if we know what what the setting is ought not to be if we're going to connect with our spouse. So when you want to have what I call important conversations or deeper conversations, you're going to avoid those things. You're going to find a place not only to recognize emotional cues, but where would that be? Where would that be best? In bed, at bedtime? Maybe not. Maybe, I don't know. on the couch, sitting down on just a Sunday afternoon or an afternoon when you are from work, where the kids have gone to bed. I mean, so find the right setting, because there's a time for everything. Even Solomon, the wisest man, says there's a time for everything under the sun. That means you got to find the right time to talk to your spouse. You know him, you know her more than anybody else does. I mean, because it's your husband, it's your wife. So you know them. And you know when they're exhausted, or at least can gauge when they're exhausted or something is on their mind. My wife can tell you, she's not 100% correct, but I would say she's very, very, very much up there, that she can tell when something is on my mind. She'll say, I can see something's on your mind, huh? I say, yeah. Or she may say, I see you're someplace else in your mind, in your thinking. I said, yes. So she have, almost 40 years of to practice. So it's get better. But I mean, even after all this time, it's not 100% accurate. There are times she's off, and there's times I'm off. So we're not saying we've gotten it all worked out, but we are better at this because we've chosen better times. Sometimes I have to sit on certain things. I know I intentionally sit on certain things, looking for the right moment. It's like I'm trying to be this detective, and I'm looking, okay, is this the right moment? And is that the right moment? So Kingsley, I don't have time for that. That could be the problem, my friend. Why wouldn't you have time for something that's as important as this? Why wouldn't you have time for something that you could deepen your relationship and connect better with your spouse and have less conflict? And like Sarah and John, where weeks go by and you're not talking as much as you used. Why would you not want to invest some time? And isn't it worth it? For me, it does. And I hope it does for you as well. But find the right setting is very important. When you want to do, timing is everything. The right setting is also important. And thirdly is practice. And you're going to hear this many times. Practice active listening. This is one of the key aspects of timing, because you want to be able to listen with your ears, listen with your eyes, right? Because you're going to see things and you're going to hear things. Those two important places of where information comes in. So you're listening attentively, not just what your spouse is saying, but what he or she is not saying at the time, right? And what's happened also in active listening, beyond that, what I've just said, when you're actually in conversation with your spouse, you want to make certain that you avoid interrupting or becoming defensive in that moment. One of the things that I have suggested in the past and still suggest today, and this is going to be a shameless plug, but I want to share this with you right here, because when I say avoid interrupting or getting defensive, many times it's a muscle that you work on so you can restrain yourself, because you're feeling the temptation. Here we go again. You're feeling the temptation to want to interrupt, to want to get defensive when you hear certain things, and it's understandable. It's our human nature. But even that, we need to bring into, the Bible would say, bring every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ, right? So we have to work hard at this. We have to be intentional. And can I tell you something? As much as you may try, you're going to get it wrong sometimes. But here's what happened. You get it wrong and you get it better over time, and get it right over time, the more you practice. And that's why I think when I say a shameless plug, I've created what I believe is a very, very important and good tool to practice this kind of listening and avoiding interruption. And that is the Connect Strong conversational cards for couples. Because in that card deck, right, in the card deck and the instructions that follow that, it tells you how to make certain that whoever have the floor, so to speak, and I'm using air quotes here, I know you can't see that, but whoever have the floor, who's speaking, the other person have to listen. And the rules that comes with the cards allows you to practice this on non-nuclear topics, right? So you get used to conversating, used to actively listening to your partner, because that's what the card teaches about, and how to be empathetic. So it is empathetic communication is based around that. So when you're listening to your spouse, no matter what is being said, however hard it is, you're hearing something, you're going to practice being present, being attentive, and not interrupt or get defensive. So the cards are a great starting point for something like this. And you say, Kingsley, how can I get access to those cards? Great question. You can go to kingsleygrant.com/cards. Simply as that. And you can have access to those cards. Now, as of this recording, the cards, you can get a $10 discount as of this recording. Why do I say as of this recording? Because I'm actively trying to get these cards up on Amazon. And when I get them up there, then the cards will be full price. This discount will go away, and you can only get that on my site right now for $10 off if you make it before it gets on Amazon. Now, you may be listening to this now and say, well, I went to your website at kingsleygrant.com/cards, and it's no longer available. And I'll say, I'm sorry, because I did mention that it's only a limited time. So you may want to get the cards now and start practice active listening, because in a very fun and meaningful way. And these cards are made for that purpose, because again, to diminish or not diminish, to decrease the conflicts and to resolve conflicts easier, you've got to practice active listening. But here's what happened. The word practice means doing it over and over. But I love what the cards do. It does force you to do that, right? So you have something as a tool that trains your brain to know how to actively listen. So I want to encourage you to get that card deck, not because I created them, but because I find them to be a very important tool for this exact thing I'm talking about. Again, at kingsleygrant.com/cards. Now, here is what I wanted to really drive home as we kind of coming towards the end of our episode. And that is that the key, right, to implement this idea of timing requires me to be self-aware, right? To be self-aware. It's important that you practice self-awareness, which is part of emotional intelligence, so that you can be able to be, it's almost like, you're scouting out the land. What am I looking for here? You're kind of, mapping out where you're at. You're kind of getting in tune with your environment, your surrounding, so you can know what's happening. And that's why self-awareness is so important. It gives you that advantage. So the key to implementing what I've just talked about is self-awareness. Now, the question now is, going back to Sarah and John, as you heard your story, the question is, did Sarah and John recognize emotional cues? And based upon what we read earlier, right, they did not, because when the argument came about, they chose to talk about it at a time where they were both emotionally hijacked, right? Which is never a good time to practice what I'm suggesting here, right? So they did not recognize emotional cues. Sarah talked about this. She brought this up at a time when John, and even though I did not give you all the background, but she didn't bring it up at a time where John would be more willing to hear what she had to say, right? And John, when he wanted to apologize to make things right, he probably was moved too quickly because Sarah was still upset. And maybe the timing on that of even requesting an apology, requesting forgiveness by apologizing. And so even in apology, you want to make sure the timing is right where the person can hear the apology. And sometimes you might want to create a space between the trigger when something happens and when you apologize. Second question, did Sarah and John find the right setting? The answer again is no, right? They did not create a safe space to have this conversation. And I know that I didn't give you all the details, but I want to share with you a part of the details that you may be missing is that when Sarah brought this thing to John, they were just basically passing. They were not sitting down. It was not the end of the day. They didn't have their safe space created. And she brought this issue up to him, and he wasn't ready for that. Whether he was tired physically or emotionally or mentally, he wasn't ready. So she also missed the cue, and they didn't have the right setting for that. And the third question is, did they practice active listening? No, they were very defensive. They could not wait to defend what was being said. Sarah brought a charge, so to speak, to John. He became defensive and said hurtful words. And of course, as he said hurtful words and things escalated, she also did the very same thing. So they did not practice active listening and were not self-aware or practice enough emotional intelligence, as you heard me just said. So I believe that Sarah and John could do a better job. And I think maybe as you're hearing today in this episode, you probably are seeing where you could have done a better job in something, or how you could possibly resolve some conflict that you may be experiencing right now, but you just did not know how the tools. But I want to suggest again, these 3 things I mentioned to recognize emotional cues, find the right setting, and practice active listening. I believe this will help you to truly find better ways to talk about difficult things, and why I said timing is everything for resolving conflict in your marriage. My question is, would you agree? Do you agree with that? What's your thoughts on this? So I would say, what would you say was the most helpful thing as you listened? What stood out to you the most? And I would love to hear from you. And so you can always respond by direct messaging me on any of the on Facebook or Instagram. I would love to hear from you. So make sure you make your way there and direct message me with a question, a comment. If you want to make it public, you can always post that under the social media post on any of these episodes that you see. But if you want to engage with me, you can also send me an email, and the announcer, which will tell you in a few moments how to do that. Now, again, leaving a rating and review, which I asked you earlier, is so simple. I'm going to get this done in less than 90 seconds. So here we go. First thing go to your Apple Podcast app. Go to your Apple Podcast app. Search for Happier Marriage Podcast. Happier Marriage. Just put the words Happier Marriage. You will see Happier Marriage Secrets pop up. Once it comes, you're going to click on the image. Click on the image and then scroll all the way down, and you'll see ratings and review, and you see the 5 stars. So I know you're going to click on the 5 stars, and this is your spousal honor. This is your donation, so to speak, without giving money. This is your donation to the episode. And I would really appreciate you when you do donate this way. You're telling me that this is really was helpful, and I would love to hear from you in that regards. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. And I truly wanted to hear how you're practicing better timing in your marriage. So stay tuned for the announcer. And before she comes, let me say to you, let's make marriages happier again.
We've come to the end of another exciting show, and if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.